Hi, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning fan, thanks so much for your support. Be sure and like, subscribe, share. It really helps me to get the word out to people because I find there's so many things on the internet that need somebody to really sit down and examine to help people weed through. Some of these people, like in our last video where we were talking about the perfect recall, people fall for these things because they sound great, but when you actually put them under the microscope, you find that they're just not as accurate as they portray. So getting the word out is really helpful for people to weed through that information and to have some place to learn. So today's episode is one that you'll probably enjoy a great deal. Some of my gun dog friends out there will either like it or hate it, but either way, like I said before, I'm here to help everyone learn. The focus of this video will be on rewards, including praise, because this guy says you should not praise your dog. You also won't be seeing me on camera today because I've been sick almost a week and I just really don't feel like it. I think the video is much better without my face anyway, so I have several things to discuss with you before we watch the video. First, what is a reward? What constitutes a reward? I went over this in another episode, but in case you haven't watched or listened to the others, by definition, a reward is anything that follows a behavior that increases the likelihood of that behavior recurring. A punishment is anything that decreases the chances of the behavior recurring. Again, if you haven't watched all those other episodes, you need to go back to the perfect come when called method video because I explain rewards and punishments a great deal more there. And I find that gun dog trainers often feel like training is training, and because they are very good at training their gun dogs, that these methods should carry over to all breeds, but generally that is not the case. And I believe today's episode is going to be one that clearly points out that fact. But anyway, let's use my son to explain a few things. First, I use my psychology knowledge on animals and not people, but I do find relating things back to concepts we know and understand makes it easier to get my point across, and it makes things less sciencey. Since my son Cameron has expressed an interest in being an online target for this episode, let's take him up on it. I actually think it's a great idea because he's off in college, and you know as well as I do that guys who are off in college are way more like animals than humans. So, in his case, what is a reinforcer for Cameron? Well, there are two main kinds. The first one is a primary reinforcer. That's anything innate that doesn't have to be learned. Food, water, pleasure. Those can change over time, but the key is these things are not learned. But why? Because things that are, and things that are not, aren't. If you've ever been a parent, you know exactly why I said that. Anyway, how to gain access to a primary reinforcer is learned. Those can include things like cutting class and staying after school for band, but being late for band, and many other things that Cameron doesn't think I know about. So, those aren't the reinforcers. Those are the behaviors that get the reinforcers. And if doing teenage boy things did not achieve its goals, he wouldn't have been a repeat offender. See how that works? By definition, the reinforcer that shall not be named is a reinforcer for him because he kept doing the same stupid things over and over. Now let's discuss secondary reinforcers. Those are the things that are learned, and they're only important because they're paired with a primary reinforcer. When Cameron hears the words fried chicken come out of my mouth, he immediately perks up because that has become a secondary reinforcer that's paired with the taste of how I sometimes cook chicken. He didn't have to learn to like my fried chicken, he just did. But knowing that me saying I am going to fry chicken is learned and it's secondary to the fried chicken itself. Now, moving on, not all reinforcers are equal. We'll give Cameron a break and pick on my husband, Don, for a second. You know what they say, a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. If food is a primary reinforcer, then it should be easy to offer my sweetheart something to eat to get him to do something, right? Not so fast. If you invited him to come over and do a little project for you, and you offered him red beans and rice followed by chocolate cake for dessert, he would have other plans that day. It wouldn't matter what day it was, he would be too busy to come. He loves many foods, but not those foods. Yeah, I know, crazy, huh? So for him, that's no incentive at all to get him to come drive to your house and do a project for you. Unless the project is some weird woodworking thing that piques his interest. Then he would come do the project for you and leave before dinner is served. That's called a self-reinforcing behavior. Doing something for the sake of doing it because you like it. People have hobbies. They don't have to be paid to do those activities. And in fact, just the opposite is true. People will pay money to do the activity. In other words, they'll pay money for the opportunity, for the supplies, for whatever it takes just to be able to do that activity. And they do it because they like it. I call some dogs recreational barkers because the act of barking at anything or nothing is fun. But the bottom line is, the recipient is the one who decides what is reinforcing and what is not. One of the biggest problems with reducing the number of reinforcers that are given during training is that the trainer wants to swap what works for what they wish would work, but the recipient doesn't find it enticing. So people want to go from using food to pats on the head and praise, but the dog doesn't find that very appealing, especially since they get pats on the head and praise for not doing complex tasks too. And that could be like giving them affection just because you love them. So the recipient decides what's reinforcing. Incidentally, they also decide what is punishing to them as well. But since the focus of this video is on not praising your dog, we're just going to stick to discussing rewards instead. This video is another one that's a little longer. I won't play it all the way through, but I will let it run for a little bit before interrupting for commentary so that it preserves the context of what he's saying. And then after we're done, I will tell you the story of my gun dog, one of them at least, and what it took. He was trained very similarly to how this guy believes training should be. It turned this dog into a mess. And I got him and basically turned him around. I'll just tell you the story after this video critique, and then it'll make more sense.
Hi, my name's welcome to Mordor Gun Dogs. This week we're going to do a video and it's about praising your dog, okay? More to the point, it's about not praising your dog. People are going to be going, what do you mean don't praise your dog? What I mean is a lot of times people's dogs do something really well, and then as soon as they praise it, it all goes to hell, okay? It sounds really stupid because everyone wants to reward their dog. They want to praise them. Now, any of you who've watched me before will know I'm not really a tip-bit treat trainer. It's not my bag. I'll do it with a dog that's shy or doesn't trust me yet. But most dogs that we work with, you know, we're lucky. We tend to just work with sort of the breeds we know: Labradors, Spaniels, some Pointers, but all the sort of gun dog breeds. We do deal with some other dogs as well. I've always got a sheepdog, a border collie, and we do help people with other dogs. But the thing about this sort of obsession with rewarding your dog is one of the things I say to people. I've got 2 kids, okay? They're 9 and 3. I don't walk around my house with a pocket full of pound coins, dishing them out every time one of them puts a sock on, or one of them puts their cereal in the bowl, or one of them doesn't pour milk on the floor. There's things you've got to expect from them, okay? There's things you expect as the child or the dog grows. There's things you just expect them to do, and you're not going to just pay them and bribe them. I mean, maybe some people do, and they're probably much better parents than I am. But it's not my bag, okay? There's expectations about life, okay? I don't tell anyone who works for me every day when they turn up, thanks for coming to work. You know, it's their job. They get paid to do it. They like doing it. They don't need reward.
So here's an example of someone not understanding what rewards really mean. He clearly says that he does reward his employees because they get paid. And he says they enjoy their work, but even if they didn't enjoy their work, they're coming because he's paying them to come. Whether he gives them some little something, whether they walk through the door, does not matter because the end goal is they are being paid. And if he didn't pay them, even though they may enjoy working for him and they may enjoy their job, chances are they would stop coming in. There are things in life that are just expected, and they're all wrapped up into one big behavioral chain that gets someone what they want. In the interest of his employees, no, he doesn't reward them with little pieces of coins or food or whatever for coming in the door, but all of those behaviors chained together do get rewarded in that he pays them the paycheck. That is what they are there for. For the kids, not spilling milk on the floor or putting on your socks, that's all great, but they're doing that because there is something else in it for them that necessitates them doing those things, right? And not spilling milk on the floor, if they did spill milk on the floor, would that mean that they are willful or was it an accident? And if it's an accident, okay, I wouldn't pay them for it, but would you punish them for making that spill of milk on the floor? And the answer is it depends. As always, everything always depends. But as he is saying, no, you do not have to pay each and every little bitty tiny behavior. You should teach every little bitty segment or behavior, but you don't have to continue paying for those little bitty segments of effort because at some point those all get baked into one big recipe. It just becomes part of a recipe. It becomes one of the ingredients. If you want to go somewhere, you have to put your socks and shoes on in order to be able to get out the door to go to your friend's house. So you don't have to reward all those little bitty behaviors. They are expected, but there is still a reward in it somewhere.
But if someone does something extra special, then yeah, sure, we'll give them a reward. And it's exactly the same with a dog. Now, this is Blue, okay? Blue is obviously a fox red Labrador. He's a very handsome boy. Blue is off to New Zealand in the early part of 2024, which is pretty exciting for him, pretty exciting for us. We've had a few dogs there before, but not many. It's a long old way. So hopefully his owner's going to come and get him and spend some time and hang out with us and learn about Blue, and that because he's going to be a great gun dog. But Blue's life evolves around work. He loves retrieving. He loves playing with me. He loves doing stuff with me. He doesn't need a reward. He doesn't need like a biscuit. He doesn't need me to pat him.
Here's a prime example of someone not understanding what a reward is. Now, we call dogs doing their job or doing what they're doing as we call it work. But as we know, some work can be self reinforcing. They do it because they like doing it. The reward is in the process of doing whatever it is they like to do. It's like a hobby. Nobody needs to pay you to do your hobby. You do it because you like to. And primary reinforcers it doesn't have to be learned. That means for a retriever, for a gun dog, for the breeds that he specifically works with, usually, it means that it's innate. They don't have to learn to like fetching. They do need to learn to be steady at the line, not break and go willy-nilly doing whatever they like. But they also don't need treats, and they don't need pets, and they don't need all the things because the reward for them is being able to go get whatever it is. It's innate. They may learn how to pick it up. They may learn to bring it all the way to their human. They may learn to release it to the human. There are things that they do learn, but the actual going and grabbing the thing should be innate. They should want to do it without being taught how, and it should be pleasurable for them to do it. That's what people have chosen these dogs to breed. They breed dogs who love to go fetch with dogs that love to go fetch, and they get puppies that love to go fetch, and they breed those with retrievers of the same sort, and you end up with a breed of dog like a Labrador that absolutely loves to go. They love to go fetch. They love to watch it fall. They love to go. It's innate. It's not trained. Even though things about it are trained, the love and the desire to go to it is not trained. So he is saying that his dog doesn't need to be rewarded for going and doing these things. But he's wrong. It's self-rewarding behavior. The dog has been rewarded. The reward is already in there. It's true that he doesn't have to add another reward on top of it, but the reward is there or the dog wouldn't do it. For a child to put on their socks and shoes, or for an employee to come to work, if that paycheck isn't in there somewhere, if the employees didn't get paid once they came and worked for a week or a month or however long it is, if the children had to put on their socks and shoes, but they never went anywhere, there was never any valid reason for it, at least in your children's eyes, you would have to motivate them somehow. They wouldn't do it just because. Unless you had a girl and she liked to play dress up, then she would put on socks, shoes, any kind of clothing because she liked to play dress up. That in itself would be self-rewarding. So from what this guy is saying, food, pats, praise, they're the only rewards that they are. And a gun dog, his gun dogs don't need a reward because it's expected that they go pick up a bird. Well, he's missing the whole point, and that is it may be a job to you, but if it's innately self-reinforcing for the dog, you don't have to have any other external rewards. But if you were working with another breed of dog, say a Pekingese or a Shih Tzu, they would not have that same innate love for running through pastures and picking up things and bringing them back. For that dog, you would have to find a different way of motivating them. You're going to have to give them a reason why, because for that breed of dog, it's not likely to be self-reinforcing. It might be, but it probably won't be. And so for that animal, you're going to have to find a different way of doing it. And that's the problem that can occur. They think the labs are doing it just because they tell them to, when in actuality, the labs are being highly reinforced by being allowed to play fetch. And the other dogs don't have that desire. So they are forcing upon that other breed of dog the mentality that you're going to do what I tell you to do, and I'm not going to reward you for it because I've done it with a whole bunch of labs, and they always do what I tell them to do, and I don't use food with them, so you don't need food either. So with that concept that Labradors find fetching and going and getting the object so highly reinforcing that it does not feel like work. So in this gentleman's perception, his dog is working, but in the dog's perception, he's getting to do the greatest thing ever. So in the next clip that you're going to listen to as he finishes out this idea of his, replace the word work with play and see if it makes a difference in how you perceive things.
In some ways, he's almost like when you go to pat him when he's working, he actually moves his head out of the way and he's like, no, get off, I'm working. And I've seen this with my older dogs. My kids are out with me when the dogs are working and they come up and try and cuddle the dog, and the dog literally does that. Not in a mean way, just, no, sorry, I've got things to do. In exactly the same way you or I would if we're sitting at our desk trying to write an email or we're on the phone, we just put our hands up and say, just give us 5 minutes. We're just in the middle of something. They don't need the praise because they love what they're doing, okay? And that's the key. And this obsession with every time your dog sits and stays, you have to reward them.
The entire time that he has done that last spiel, The dog has been trying to look around him. He is highly, highly focused on something other than the handler. It's something, if you're watching the video version, you can kind of see what I meant. But if you're listening to the podcast version where it's audio only, just trust me that this dog is like laser focused on something way off.
We leave the dog sitting and staying, okay? We walk away. We go back to him, and if I reward him going, good boy, then he's going to start jumping around. He's not, because he's pretty well trained, but he's more likely to go, oh, I got a reward, and he's going to start jumping around and playing the fool. Sit. Whereas if I just walk away calmly, and this is on my sit and stay video, so have a look at that, and I walk back, his reward is the fact that, and I walked into this field over here, over that gate there, sort of 150, 200 meters away, I dropped a retrieve. I dropped one of these. And his reward is he gets to go and get it.
And there you have it. He doesn't give his dog a reward because his dog is working and doing his job. But the guy actually does understand that fetching for the dog is a reward, but he doesn't think you should reward your dog because it should be expected of them. And if you do give them any other type of reward, you will lose control of the dog. What if they don't like fetching? What if that isn't their reward?
Roy, sit. 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 Now, I took the retrieve from him, and the first thing I did was put a bit of pressure on him. Sit. Sit, because I know this guy. He's like, where's the next one? And he's going to start leaping around. So I'm very quick to say, no, you just calm down. Now I'm going to try and do another one. I'm going to just throw one for him. I'm going to send him out. And this time when he comes back, I'm going to take him off him. I'm going to make a fuss of him. And you'll see the difference in the dog and the focus, and also just the ease and the fun of it all, the handling and everything else. Blue. So I'm just giving him a quick good boy to come back. And then, well done, good boy. And you see, and then you see he starts leaping around and he's nibbled at my hand and he's being silly and because I just went to praise him, okay? Now, people go, oh, that doesn't matter, I don't care. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that how we do this is how everybody should do it and my rule's the only rule. This is just how I do it. These videos are all about how we do it here. We've been doing it for like 20 years and it's what suits us. And when I take a retrieve off a dog, I don't want them leaping up to my face. I don't want them bashing me in the stomach with their feet or anything. I don't want them doing that. If you want your dogs to do that, then you can do what you like. And that's the whole thing. It's all about training the dog and working with the dog to do it how you want to do it. But I just needed to get this point across about praising the dog, because we see so many times people come for a lesson, the dog sits, they stay there, they come back to the dog, and as soon as they praise the dog or they give the dog the biscuit, the dog's off. And then so they've done a nice sit and stay, they've walked away, they've come back, and then as soon as the dog gets the reward, it's off again. Literally 2 fingers, I'm off. We see the same thing retrieving. The dog runs flying in. So, blue. The dog comes flying in, they give the dog the biscuit. As soon as they've got the biscuit, they're off again. Because they're not doing it for you. They're not doing it for the want to work with you and to be with you. They're doing it just because you've got a bit of sausage in your pocket. And as soon as they've got the sausage, they're off. Because you haven't got any more sausage anymore. And then you call them again. They're like, oh, have you got more sausage? Great, I'll come and eat that as well. Have that bit of sausage, then they're off again. And the cycle continues. So make sure when you do any of these things, if you want to give your dog a bit of sausage, make sure the sausage is sit, sausage, sit, and remain in control. Don't allow the sausage, the treat, the biscuit, the praise, the razzing them up to mean, that's us done, I'm off. And he's off to find another retrieve. And he would be, this kind of guy with this kind of energy would be a perfect example of a dog that's going to do that. They're going to just zoom off again and go and try and find another retrieve because that's what they want to do, and that's they're off to suit themselves, okay? So try and get over this obsession with you've got to reward your dog for putting one foot in front of the other. You've got to reward your dog for sitting and staying. You've got to reward your dog. They don't need as many rewards as you think. We don't need all these rewards all the time, do we? We just need to know that there's a positive vibe around us and people appreciate what we do, but we don't need constant, thanks very much, here's some money, here's this, thanks very much. It's not why we go about our daily business, and if it is, I suggest you go about your daily business in a different way, because it doesn't sound much fun to me. But with these guys, it's just so key to understand that the work, the training, that's what he's focusing on me for. He's looking at me because he wants to do stuff with me, and that's what we need to harness.
Now, what he wants to do is get to that reinforcer, which is the retrieve. He doesn't do it because he wants to do it with that guy. He would do it with anybody who would take him out there and do that.
So here we've got Goose, who's another prime example of just a happy Labrador. Here, sit. So he's one of our young future stud dogs. Sit up, sit. Bit fidgety, bit excitable, sit. But if I walk back to him, sit. Good boy, look what happens, okay? Sit. So then I have to get him to sit again, sit. Walk away, sit. Now what I want is when I come back to him, he just sits there. But as soon as I go, good boy, and he's off.
So if you're watching my video, you can see that him saying that he's such a good boy, he's also kind of riling him up a little. When I'm doing classes or doing lessons coming into a home, I tell the parents not to let the kids rile the dogs up by playing with the sides of their face and doing the very petting that he is doing, because it encourages play biting and hyperactivity. So if you're listening in, he's coming in, he's praising the dog, but he's also doing some physical petting that's kind of rubbing the sides of his face and riling him up a little. You can praise your dog, you can pet them without it being that.
So he comes in as a retrieve. Sit, sit, sit. Now he so loves jumping up after he gives me the retrieve. Sit. I've got to push him down, give him a little dont on the nose, okay? Sit. And that wasn't even with any praise. So imagine if I'd gone, whoa, well done, or anything else. He doesn't need praise. Because he loves his job, okay? And his job is his praise. Look at him go, he's like, yeah, this is great. Come on, Goosey, good boy. And he comes back with it. Sit. 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 So if anything, I'm actually almost giving him the opposite from praise. I'm doing a firm but calm sit, just to keep him on a level, because he's just itching to basically leap around and be a clown. And that's great. And what we do with Goose is we do our training, we do our formal, all our work with him, we do our healing, we do our sitting and staying, we do our retrieves, sit. We do our sitting on the whistle, we do all the things we're going to do with him, and then at the end we go, Goosey, good boy, come on.
And there's your problem. You can clearly see that once he releases him and starts all that, he actually encourages the jumping up, the hyperactivity, the moving around. So he actually creates his own problem there.
Goosey, 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 goosey. Goosey, 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 goosey. And we do it all at the end, okay? And the reason we do it at the end is because then we're not taking away from the work. Kids in a class, okay? They do their class, they sit there, they pay attention. At the end of the class, they get to go outside and run around and play rugby or football or something. They're not playing football after every maths question. They're not running around the class after every word that they spell right. They've got to do a number of things, then they get the reward at the end. And that is a much better way to praise your dog.
So he talks about children in school and that they can't go play football or they can't go run a race or whatever else he did. But you know his dog is doing that. He's literally coming in. He has to sit and stay or whatever he's doing. He has to do those things. And in between reps, he is running and getting the bird and coming back, or getting the bumper and coming back. So literally when they're working in the field, the dog is completing one task, going and having a heyday doing what they love to do, coming back. And now, yeah, I can see my field people going, hey, wait a minute. They're not having a heyday in that they're going wild out there and doing whatever they want, because that doesn't work either. But the dog is going out, doing what he loves, having that little break, and then he comes back under control again, and he gets to go get another bird or another bumper, and then he gets to do another one. Sometimes he swims with it. So this guy, I guess what this guy means is when they're doing their healing and they're sitting and all the things, that they don't tell them sit and then let them run around doing crazy stuff. And with that, I agree. But he seems to overlook the fact that when you put it all together, the dog really is going to play a game of rugby after each question. Instead of the obedience work being some dreadful thing they have to do, that stuff can actually become a secondary reinforcer to the primary reinforcer, because the dog does learn that if they sit, if they heal, if they do those things, they will have access to their primary reinforcer, which is running to get the bird.
Okay? I'm going to say, go back to it. When I'm talking about praising the dogs, I'm not just talking about attention, I'm talking about biscuits, I'm talking about anything that as soon as your dog's done its good job, you do something and then they just go and they ruin it all. Don't do that, because it's just creating a habit. And the more excitable your dog is, like, this is why I brought Goose and Blue out to this lesson, this video. They're both awesome dogs. They're really great, fun dogs to train. They're real personalities, okay? They're really fun. I mean, they're two of our favourite dogs. We wouldn't tell the other dogs that. But we have to make sure we handle them in the right way. If this was a meek and mild little Labrador girl who was like, oh dear, I'm not sure about this, then, you know, we would make much more of a good boy. Well done. You've done a good job. But you've got to just not just conform to the standard, oh, every time they do something right, we give them a biscuit. It's a load of bollocks, okay? Thanks for watching. I hope you've all learnt something, even if it's how not to train dogs. And remember, you get out what you put in, which is why Goosey gets so much out, because he puts in so much, don't you, Goosey? Come on then.
Okay, so let's tie up some loose ends. I started this episode talking about fried chicken, red beans, chocolate cake, and woodwork. For a well-bred Labrador, going to get the bird or bumper is like my husband doing woodwork. They do it because they love it. This man's employees don't need little bits of money for all the little things that they do all day, because at the end of the week, they get a voucher for some fried chicken. Paychecks are a secondary reinforcer, by the way. Money only has value because it gets you access to the primary reinforcers like shelter, food, water. And so, for as long as his employees keep getting those vouchers, they'll keep showing up. A well-bred lab likes to retrieve, but a Shetland sheepdog may not. Offering to let a Sheltie retrieve in exchange for a difficult task may be like offering my husband red beans and rice. No thanks. And if the Sheltie doesn't like to retrieve, it isn't fair to tell them that they shouldn't get any reward at all if they don't like to fetch. You cannot expect a dog to be motivated to work for the same reward that another dog finds self-reinforcing. There has to be a reward in there somewhere, or the dog will not willingly participate. So, the recipient defines the reward, not the trainer. When you make blanket statements that you shouldn't be giving food and dogs should do what they're expected to do, you have to remember that there's more to the story than that. People who put a huge emphasis on not using food in training are people who don't really understand rewards. Not everything is about food. So I promised you a story, and it'll kind of help with what you've seen here as well. I bought a Labrador Retriever named Bang, B-A-N-G, Bang. He originally came from a breeder trainer with very similar views as the guy in this video. Bang didn't get praised or petted until he was done working. Even after working with a different field trainer, he was hard to watch because someone just took the reinforcement out of the retrieve by forcing him to do things the way they wanted and punishing him for making mistakes. So when I got him, he was very obedient. But when he was working, he was dead inside. His tail was down, his eyes were dull. He was like a machine going through the motions, just waiting on his handler to give him the next command. One of my friends would be a jerk and come pet bang while we were waiting for our turn, knowing that being petted was Bang's signal that he was done working. So it was all in good fun. But I had to help him be alive and present in the moment when we were doing field work, and he had to know that it was okay to accept praise and still keep doing what we were doing. So I literally sat on a bucket with blank ammo and a gun. I would fire the gun, send him for the retrieve. He would deliver to hand, and then I would praise and pet him. And then we would immediately set up for another round of this. And I did it over and over and over until he realized that it was perfectly fine to receive praise and have a positive attitude when doing field work. It was okay to love what you were doing. I didn't use food to get him past it, but I didn't have to. He did still love to fetch. He was just shut down because there was so much pressure being put on him before I got him, and he didn't get any kind of reassurance until it was all over with. So his praise was the absence of corrections, and he always lived in fear of making a mistake and getting corrected. It took a lot for him to trust again, and I was really protective over him because this poor dog literally had PTSD from doing what should have been a self-reinforcing activity. So if you can imagine someone taking your hobby and putting so much stress and so much pressure on you that it turns it into work that you really wish you weren't there for. That's kind of what happened to this guy. And it took a while, but people who had seen him before would comment that he looked like a completely different dog. So I look back on my time with Bang very fondly. I had to put him to sleep on his 14th birthday. And for all you field people out there, Bang was an HRCH Master Hunter with an obedience title and a Canine Good Citizen certification. And I absolutely know what training a retriever is like and why they don't need food. But recommending not giving a dog praise or food in training because field dogs don't need it is falling short of understanding what rewards really are. There will always be one of two things at play when your dog is being trained. They're either working for reinforcement or they're working to avoid punishment. The, quote, balanced trainers say they're employing both, rewarding a dog for good behavior and then punishing them for bad behavior, but there's a lot of room for misunderstanding in that as well. For many dogs, the trainers aren't really spending any time finding out what the dog finds truly reinforcing. They're just offering them what they think should be reinforcing and then punishing the dog for not choosing something that the dog may have found to be minimally appealing in the first place. So at that point, these dogs are working to avoid corrections, and the trainer may feel that they're being balanced, but from the dog's perspective, they're not. Remember, food is not the only reinforcer. It is a primary reinforcer, but that's not the only reinforcer. The best training looks at the entire picture. It identifies the motivations and the rewards for that dog. It takes a look at what the dog is really after, what they find to be motivating, and makes it so that the dog will work for that instead of butting heads with you. When I have clients that contact me and they say their main complaint is that the dog is stubborn and they want to teach the dog to listen to them, it really is that they haven't found a way to motivate their dog. They want to put on the dog what they feel is motivating. So it may be praise, it could be telling the dog they're good, scratching them behind the ear, but the dog may not feel like that is a big enough motivator to go through all this effort. So they're butting heads and they're clashing because the person is trying to force the dog to do something And the dog is basically saying, if you want to have that attitude, I'm going to give as good as I get. And so, from the dog's point of view, their human is completely unrealistic. The human doesn't even take the time to figure out what they like or not like. And they try to say, you're going to do what I say do. And I don't care whether you like it or not. And I don't care if there's anything in it for you. But I'm going to expect you to do that. And in return, I'll give you an attaboy. Now, think about us. If we were to go to work and our boss said, hey, so starting today, you're going to do what I tell you to do, even if it's cleaning the toilets as part of your job. And you're going to do it because you like me. And I don't really care what you like and what your needs are, but that's what you're going to get. I'm going to tell you you're a good employee, atta girl. See you tomorrow. Now, how many of us would actually show up if the person said, you're not going to get paid for this? Your payment is going to be me saying, oh, what a good employee you are. How many of you are going to keep showing up? And that's what trainers do to dogs. They don't keep in mind what the dog's real motivators are, and instead they pay them in the way that they want to pay them, regardless of whether or not the dog finds that reinforcing. And furthermore, they want to put it on the dog to do as I say, and I don't care what you think about it, but you're going to do it. And you can understand then why some dogs are hard-headed or stubborn. They're really not. If you put yourself in their shoes, you wouldn't put up with it either. If you had a boss like that, you have the choice of quitting your job and finding a different one that meets your needs in a way that you find acceptable. Your dog did not ask to be your pet. Now, some people may say, yes, he chose me. Okay, but they can't, the point is they cannot quit the job the way you can and find something more appealing. When I'm working with clients, it's very important to take a look at the bigger picture. And that's why I named the series that I'm doing, I chose to name this The Bigger Picture, because there always is a bigger picture. And so I choose to look outside of teaching the dogs, sit down, all the training things. Training only goes so far. Doesn't matter whether you use electronic collars or you use nothing but treats. Doesn't matter. Training is only going to take you so far. And then you're going to need to look at the bigger picture. You're going to need to figure out what motivators are at work, because you don't live in a bubble. You don't live in a bubble where there are no competing distractions or no competing motivations. And so working with someone like me, I look at the bigger picture and I take into consideration the competing motivations. The first thing I do is find out what makes your dog tick. What motivates them? What do they like? What do they not like? And I use those in a way that the dog gets their needs met by us controlling the environment in such a way that makes us happy, and they get what they want too. And so instead of working against one another, you're both working towards the same goal, and then it's not hard. And not everything is about food. It really does not have to be just about food. Food can be an easy one for a dog that's super food motivated, but it's not the only one. Sometimes a dog would prefer to play instead. There are so many things that any individual who makes a blanket statement, you should never use food in training, really are falling short of understanding, really truly understanding reinforcements and how they work. And I want to be sure that I'm not just throwing a blanket out there for all field trainers not knowing how reinforcements work. That's not what I'm saying. Just like saying that all positive motivation trainers are good. People can misunderstand reinforcements using cookies as easily as someone who doesn't recommend using cookies can misunderstand reinforcements. So there's no blanket statements that apply. Just because I choose to use reinforcements doesn't mean I always think that they're cookies. And it also doesn't mean that I would never use food either. Putting out blanket statements that you shouldn't use food for every little thing and you shouldn't praise your dog, it's putting out a blanket statement that implies no dog should ever need that. And that really takes away opportunities. If someone believes, oh, I've heard that you shouldn't use food in training, I've heard other people, he never uses food in training. Well, what if your dog needs that? What if that's what it takes to motivate your dog? It kind of takes that out of the equation. And then if you're not motivating the dog, then that second part kicks in. And that's when you're forcing the dog to do something and they're only doing it to avoid punishment. Having a dog that only works to avoid punishment isn't very fun. It's not a fun dog to live with because they're always trying to find ways to get around doing what you tell them they cannot do. You know, we're the same way. If you tell someone you can't do that, the answer is watch me, or as the younger generation says, bet. And dogs do that too. If you are telling them no and punishing them, and you're also not finding a more appropriate way to control the environment so that their needs are being met, you're forever going to be butting heads with your dog. That's not a fun way to live. That's not the part of the family atmosphere that you wanted when you got the dog. So if you find yourself in that position now, contact me. Send me an email. I've listed in the video description ways that you can connect with me. Just reach out. This is my specialty. I am one step above a dog trainer in that this is my specialty. Knowing how to make everyone live together harmoniously above and beyond training is what I do. Because you can identify motivators and change those around to not have that situation where you feel like you have to punish your dog all the time or stop them from doing things. You can live a harmonious life with a dog. No, it doesn't always have to be food, but it does need to be something that the dog enjoys or that meets their needs. Because if not, they're going to find a way to do what they want to do, and they're going to find a way to meet their own needs. And it's going to be in a way that you don't want. So that's today's presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you're in this situation and you've tried training before, reach out. It really is my specialty. One last thing before I close. The people in some of these photos and videos that I use, unless I marked it, those are stock photos. I am super proud of Cameron, and I'm glad that he offered up his dignity to allow me to explain things in a way that you could understand at his expense. And even though my sweetheart did not offer up his reputation, I'm sure I smoothed it over by showing you pictures of his woodwork. I'm really lucky to have the family that I do. I have 2 children that are doing well. When Donna and I got married, I acquired a 3rd child, and I love her just like I love my own. I am super, super proud of all 3 of them. So that's all I have today. Until next time, happy training.